after the 19th National Congress of the CCP, Xi Jinping, in my opinion, had only two roads to go. Either he could be the reincarnation of Mao Zedong, who died 40 years ago, or he could walk on the way of Chiang Kai-shek, who delayed about 50 years. If history were to proceed in a strange way, he might even fall into the situation of the Empress Dowager Cixi at the end of the Qing dynasty, under tremendous pressure. He hesitated between reform and conservatism, leading to the destruction of the regime. If so, later historian may be posthumously labeled Yehenara Jinping. Yehenara is the family name of Cixi. Of course, this is a simplified statement of convenient memory, which is detailed below. When he took office in 2012, many people expected Xi Jinping to become China's Gorbachev and transform the CCP thoroughly. At that time, even in the Central Party School, there were seminars on whether the Communist Party should be renamed the Chinese Social Democratic Party or simply the Chinese Socialist Party. Another expectation is hope that he becomes China's Lee Kuan Yew, starts to pursue the enlightened autocracy. Within 2 years, however, due to the central government's tighter ideological and speech policies than those of Yuan's predecessor, people abandoned his expectations of him becoming a Gorbachev or a Lee Kuan Yew. While tightened people's mind, Xi Jinping has begun to vigorously fight tigers in the name of corruption, until Zhu Yongkang was arrested on December 6, 2014, and the world knows that Xi Jinping is serious, and the people are only beginning to truly respect him. In 2014, arguably the most challenging year since Xi Jinping came to power. Since Deng Xiaoping for 30 years, no one with the boldness had dared to arrest the current standing committee of the Central Committee. Then he arrested Zhu Yongkang as a warning for Jiang Zemin Group, the one who pushed him to power in 2012. In the same year, the Sunflower Movement of the New Generation 318 occupying the Legislative Yuan took place in Taiwan, and the New Generation 926 occupying Central took place in Hong Kong and lasted until December. Looking back, why do I think there are only two ways left for Xi Jinping after the 19th National Congress, the reincarnation of Mao Zedong, who died 40 years ago, or Chiang Kai-shek, who is 50 years late? Although there are two ways, please do not misunderstand, it does not depend on Xi Jinping's personal choice. In the complex emotional environment of Chinese society and the people in the CCP, the situation of struggle is developing rapidly, and the situation is always stronger than human beings, including the top leader. Xi Jinping once lamented that none of them are men, and I believe he is a man with his own values. In an article I wrote in April 2017, the 19th National Congress of the CCP, which decided for the 100th year, there was the following sentence: the emergence of Xi Jinping at the 18th CCP National Congress in 2012 was very accidental, and this conclusion will not be repeated here. After Xi Jinping came to power, the world saw only his imperial skills and mastery of imperial power. What was less noticed was that, compared with his predecessors, including Deng Xiaoping, Xi is a more philosophical man. This point was still far from Mao Zedong's. But this gap may be Xi Jinping's strong point, a bit abstract idealism, but not strong enough to be Mao's madness and inhumanity. When Xi Jinping took office in Xinjiang, he published a series of columns entitled Zhejiang Xinyu, which was written by his team. Looking at it carefully, it was almost a taste of what Chiang Kai-shek wanted to inherit, the ideas of Zheng Guofeng and Wang Yangming. In a slightly arbitrary way, I feel that Xi Jinping is a person who has some characteristics of Mao Zedong and some characteristics of Chiang Kai-shek. But the space-time environment has been very different, so the so-called Mao Zedong's reincarnation and latecomer Chiang Kai-shek are just metaphors of direction. In fact, whatever the power of Xi Jinping after the 19th National Congress, he could not be Mao Zedong or Chiang Kai-shek. There are already a large number of people who say that he might follow the Mao Zedong's line, and there are not only hundreds of relevant articles. For Taiwanese readers who don't really know what Mao Zedong means, I won't repeat it here. Those who are more interested in it can find out one or two a full picture on the internet. then why can't I say that he may become Chiang Kai-shek, who has been 50 years late? In 2012, many expected him to be Gorbachev and Lee Kuan Yew, but as we have already analyzed, that was a thing of the past. In fact, at that time, many people expected him to emulate Chiang Ching-kuo. That is, under the pressure of the people, open the door of the party's prohibition with one eye open and one eye closed, so that the people would gradually have the opportunity to choose. However, in my judgment, even between the 19th and 20th National Congress, Xi Jinping's authority reached the kind of supremacy that Chiang Ching-kuo had in Taiwan. And Xi still not be a Chiang Ching-kuo, because China's problems were too big. From the economy to the political system. The Communist Party's mastery of the state apparatus is difficult to be replaced, and it is not a simple opening up the party prohibition that can be passed. A photograph circulated on the internet recently illustrates this situation. On a large wall in a village, a slogan appeared: China cannot be chaotic, and chaos will lead to democracy. I think most of the purpose of this slogan is to eat the tofu of Taiwan's democratic chaos. But in fact what it tells us is a big reality. With China's population and size, Taiwan has spent 30 years on a less than satisfactory democratic mechanism. If it wants to be carried out in China, it's at least 50 to 100 years. But any long journey begins with one small step, and the first step is the most hardest. In the current situation of China and Xi Jinping, Xi can only do as Chiang Kai-shek at most. He knows full that political openness is not possible, but first sees the opportunity to do a good job in the economy. And the problem of political openness will be left to the next generation. Why did I say 50 years late? For it was probably not until 10 years before his death, that is 50 years ago, that Chiang Kai-shek truly admits that it is no good not to be political openness. From a humanitarian point of view, the well-being of the Chinese people, as well as the continued progress of Taiwan. Of course, we would certainly prefer Xi Jinping to become Chiang Kai-shek, who has been 50 years late, rather than to see him become a little Mao Zedong under the pressure of China's political struggle. After the 19th National Congress, Xi Jinping became more and more like Mao Zedong, causing a backlash within the Communist Party and society. Before the 20th National Congress of the CCP in 2022, people can make a final historical evaluation of Xi Jinping. If you think about it in terms of that 20 years of ruling consistency, if fate had made Xi Jinping as Chiang Kai-shek, given China's place in the world, then 20 years from now he will be judged to be a statesman 100 times greater than Chiang Ching-kuo and Lee Kuan Yew. But if fate had made him to follow the path of little Mao Zedong, then the CCP and even China, which is bound to become Stalin and the Soviet Union in the new era, or a fascist in the 21st century. And it will be hard to say how the future of China will be. As the title says, he may even become Yehenara Jinping under the overall situation beyond his personal control. Some Taiwanese readers will have a question in their minds. If the Chinese Communist Party is allowed to follow the Soviet or fascist line, then it will collapse sooner rather than later, and Taiwan will be free even sooner. I can only urge those who have this idea in mind to read more history and know more about the sense of anxiety and plates of power of the Chinese people today. Because China's internal non-peaceful evolution will produce huge mudslides, whether economic and political, the first stop could be Taiwan. Let's not lose sight of this.